Ambulances queuing outside hospitals this winter. Ambulances that are not answering emergency calls. And this is what happens. Two women, widowed 3 years apart, both their husbands failed as they lay dying.
We call the ambulance again and we're saying it's an emergency, his eyes have rolled back, he's not responsive. Oh, there's a 6 to 8 hour wait.
I've seen ambulances out, blues and twos. I had to move out of the way yesterday for 2 of them. And of course I'm thinking, where were you when we needed you?
Both these calls were to West Midlands Ambulance Service, a service that now has the worst handover to hospital times in England.
West Midlands knows its numbers are bad, there'd be little point denying it anyway, but they are also frustrated at what's happening in the hospitals, those hospitals that are so full that patients are spilling out of emergency departments and into the corridors. So what's happening is the ambulance is arriving, but it can't hand over those patients because there is frankly nowhere for them to go.
And I'm just without.
Christmas Eve 2022 and Iqbal Rahman's heart failed. It took 3 calls and 1 hour and 20 minutes for the ambulance to arrive.
We tried to get the neighbours to come and help us, and then his breathing became more laboured. We called the ambulance again. And I'm talking to this lady and I'm saying to her, I think he's dying. He's breathing so laboured, he's clammy, all the buzzwords. I was giving her all the words that I knew were for heart patients. And then he just suddenly said, put out his hand, said, Smina, held my hand, started praying, and he was gone. And then I think after about 20 minutes or so, an ambulance turns up. Then another one turns up. And then they ring for a third one. So now there's 3, so where have they all come from? But it's just the thought that he died knowing I'm not getting any help.
Following this, the ambulance service apologised to the family. And little appears to have changed. 2 months ago, David Mann began to feel unwell as he was giving a driving lesson. The student rang her GP mother, who arrived at the scene, and rang for an ambulance 4 times. In the end, David's wife, Elaine, was forced to drive him to the hospital.
Bromsgrove traffic at 5:40 of an evening, which is roughly what the time was then, is just awful with all roadworks. And it was just a nightmare trying to get through. 6 ambulances were parked up there in the bays, and I pulled up right in front of A&E. If we could have got an ambulance, would he have stood a better chance? They've got the machinery, they've got oxygen. Can't help but think, had an ambulance have been able to get there, the situation might have ended very differently. I don't know, it's something we'll never know.
Extraordinarily, on the day David Mann died, West Midlands Ambulance Service has now told us that they asked hospitals across the region on 254 occasions to free up crews to respond to Category 2 calls. The hospitals refused 201 times.
The handover.
Now Mr Mann's MP has raised his death with the Health Secretary.
When I raised this in the House of Commons and put this specific instance to Wes Streeting, the House Secretary, I asked him if he would meet with me and with the local GP who raised this, and he evaded the question. I think this is so serious that it really does warrant a meeting with the Secretary of State so that I can make representations on behalf of my constituents.
Monday last week, and this was the scene outside Royal Stoke. Ambulances lined up outside while 148 patients waited to be seen in the emergency department. 50 miles away, still within West Midlands area, this was Heartlands Hospital. And the simple fact is, if the ambulances are waiting outside, they are not answering 999 calls. For a Category 1 call, that's for life-threatening conditions, the national average was 8 minutes and 8 seconds. West Midlands was just below this. And what the new Channel 4 News data also shows is that from October to January, around 5%, or over 1,300 people in the region, waited more than 20 minutes for Category 1 responses. Over 400 of those were experiencing suspected or were at risk of cardiac arrest. 2 of those patients waited 97 and 104 minutes for an ambulance to arrive.
Well, I was saying that patients would come to harm if the delays continue to rise. I was saying that patients would die if that happened. I was saying that the number of serious incidents of harm would continue to rise. And all of those things have happened. And sadly, despite raising concerns very formally with a number of organisations, including the CQC, including NHS England, and including the Department of Health, sadly, nothing seems to have been done properly to improve the situation.
Guidelines say a patient should be handed over to a hospital within 15 minutes, but no longer than 45 minutes, even if there's no space in the hospital. Waiting longer than 1 hour is categorised as a never event. West Midlands told us that in January, more than 14,000 handovers took over an hour. They lost 50,000 hours by not being on the road. But they only published data to 1 hour plus. Now analysis by Channel 4 News reveals what's happening beyond that hour. From October to January, the average handover in the West Midlands was actually more than 80 minutes, with 5,500 people waiting more than 6 hours outside a hospital. Birmingham's Heartlands Hospital and the Royal Stoke each had more than 1,250 patients waiting in the back of an ambulance for more than 6 hours. The longest wait this winter was almost 17 hours at the Royal Stoke in December.
We know that everyone within the system is really trying to do the best that they can for patients, but all areas of the system are limited by what they are actually able to deliver in terms of physical space, in terms of workforce, in terms of funding to support those elements as well. So the ambulance service are feeling pressures, the emergency department are feeling pressures, hospital wards are also feeling pressures.
The trusts that run Heartlands and Royal Stoke said that while their emergency departments were facing significant pressures, they were working with partners to reduce delays and were seeing improvements. While West Midlands Ambulance Service said,
"Sadly, some patients wait much longer for a response than we would want as a result of hospital handover delays. There is a direct correlation between hospital handover delays and our ability to get to patients in the community quickly. We will continue to work with our partners in hospitals to find new ways of reducing these handover delays."
Trying to make sense of what happened.
Yet that makes it harder for Mr. Rahman's widow. The pressures 3 years ago are still there now.
The paramedics, to be fair, were really upset, and they did say to me that when you're up to it, can you please put in a complaint, because it's not us. And that, I'm not blaming them. It's the failures in the system everywhere. And I don't feel anything's changed since then.
And it would seem this is the case. Samina Rahman's words echoed by David Mann's widow.
I know none of this is going to bring David back, but if it helps somebody else, something has got to happen because the system is broken. I'm not blaming the ambulance service per se or the paramedics. I think they do a wonderful job, but something has got to happen.
Victoria McDonald reporting there. Well, our FactCheck team has looked at the over 1 million ambulance journeys in the West Midlands in the last 2.5 years, and this is what they found.
How long are patients waiting in the back of an ambulance outside a hospital in England? The NHS says it shouldn't be more than 15 minutes, but the national average this January was 37 minutes. And in the West Midlands, those waits were much longer, at 80 minutes, the worst in England. Now, our FactCheck team has got hold of exclusive data showing the 188,000 call-outs West Midlands paramedics took this winter. And we can now reveal that more than 5,000 people in the West Midlands waited at least 360 minutes. That's 6 hours in the back of an ambulance to be let into hospital this winter. Our figures show around 1,000 of those long waits were for patients with suspected serious conditions, including those believed to be at risk of cardiac arrest, suffering strokes or having breathing problems. And it gets worse. We found that this winter, more than 100 people waited longer than 720 minutes. That's 12 hours in the back of an ambulance. A previous report found 8 out of 10 patients who experienced handover delays of more than an hour potentially experienced some level of harm, and 1 in 10 had severe harm. Ambulances are often held up because of overwhelmed A&E departments, which means they can't get to other patients. Paramedics and hospital staff told us that if a patient does go into cardiac arrest, they won't be left waiting outside hospital. West Midlands Ambulance Service told us it'll continue to find new ways of reducing the handover delays.
And if you have experienced ambulance delays, please email us at Channel 4 Investigations, c4investigations@itn.co.uk. Well, I'm joined now by the chair of the Commons Health Select Committee, Layla Moran. Now, Layla, you saw in Victoria's piece there 2 widows grieving and coming to terms with the failings of the ambulance service. I just wonder what you thought listening to them.
It was such a powerful piece, and I can't begin to imagine what those families are going through, knowing that they were failed so badly by a system. One described it as totally broken, and I think there will be your viewers across the country who, to some extent, relate to this, worried that this might happen to them. There's been some polling to show that over 50% of people in this country don't have faith that if they called an ambulance, that it would come. And I think that is a damning indictment of where the NHS is currently and why it is so critical that the government gets a grip of this.
Well, when you look at the fact that on the day David Mann died, West Midlands Ambulance Service asked hospitals across the region 254 times to free up crews, and they were refused that request 201 times. Do you think, listening to that data, that the NHS is broken?
So it is very clear to everyone that the NHS is under extraordinary strain. And in the case that we are hearing, when it comes to a family believing that their loved one might have not died as a result of the failings, it feels very broken. What I'm seeing from the point of view of my committee, it's not just ambulances that are the issue here. Your reporter rightly points out that the reason this is happening is because A&Es have too much pressure on them. And we are also seeing a crisis in what we call corridor care, so people being treated for 12 hours and more sometimes on literally trolleys in corridors. But actually, that could also mean in cupboards, elsewhere in totally inappropriate settings. And there are a couple of reasons why this is all happening that we've been investigating. One is there needs to be a fix to the crisis of social care. It stands to reason that if you can't successfully discharge people out of hospitals, then you've got very little chance of being able to get them in. It's quite basic.
Right, well, let me pick up on that point specifically, because I was going to ask you about social care. There is this Louise Casey review happening. There will be a report on that this year. So can the government count on the Lib Dems to back tough decisions on funding? For example, would you cut back welfare or raise taxes to fund social care? Because it's always fallen apart on a lack of cross-party consensus in the past.
Well, I mean, it was the Liberal Democrats at the last election that were calling for cross-party talks on social care for exactly this reason, Kathy.
Yeah, but take the tough decisions on funding.
Absolutely. And so we are backing Louise